I want to start today with a wild news statement from independent candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr., candidate for the presidency, of what is his mathematical path to becoming president of the United States. Many of you already know that there is no such path, but at least theoretically, what is his path? And I want you to really think about the unserious nature of what we're going to start with today. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. appeared on television and explained, even though he's not even on the ballot in California yet, okay? It's April. He's not even on the ballot in California. He believes he's going to win California outright, as well as it's a full slate of electoral votes. I believe it's 55. And this is going to serve, this is a joke, but this is going to serve to illuminate that the best case scenario for RFK having an impact is that he helps Donald Trump become president of the United States. The worst case, it's just a total humiliation and he accomplishes nothing. He's not going to win a single state. Best case, and really best if you're him, I guess, and you want to have some kind of importance, but it's really the worst case for the country, he helps elect Donald Trump. So listen to this, really listen carefully to what he's saying, and then we're going to look at some of the numbers.
Assume you're confident that you will end up on the California ballot. Right now, you're not on the California ballot. I also assume you will need all of the state's 55 electoral votes in order to win the presidency.
I could, yeah, mathematically I could do that, but we intend to win California. But we're doing something a little different in California.
Remember, we intend to win California.
There's 6 states where we've started our own party because, as it turns out, if you do that, you need fewer signatures. So if we do it the regular way, we need 245,000 signatures. But by starting our own party, which is We the People Party, we only need 75,000 people to switch their registration from Democrat to We the People or Republican to We the People. I think we have about 15,000 now. And we have till, I think, the end of May to get them. So we're very confident that we'll get on here.
We're not on the ballot. We're doing different things in different places. In some states, I'm part of a party. In some states, I'm completely independent. I don't remember the exact signature thresholds, voter signature thresholds. But our path is that I'm going to be the next president of the United States. Now, I am for involving third parties. I think we need campaign finance reform. I think we need to set limits on the duration of the election. I want a single transferable voter ranked choice voting system that's going to make it so that you can vote third parties confidently without worrying that you're actually going to help the worst candidate. I want all of those things. It's April of 2024. It's going to be Biden or Trump, and Robert F. Kennedy is helping Trump. It's just like that. Now, just to be thorough here in terms of how outrageous this is, let's start with California. We have polling from California. Biden is winning California by as much as 19, even with RFK in the poll. Like, for example, if we take a look at this Emerson poll, this is the most recent Emerson poll that we have. It's Biden 51, Trump 32, Kennedy 6. Kennedy, as he has explained, needs 34 to win. You can have a scenario where it's Kennedy 34, Biden 33, Trump 33. He's explained that that's the lowest threshold with which he could win. So in order to get from 6 to 34, because remember, Biden's already got 51 in California. That's where he's polling. Trump's at 32 in California, Kennedy 6. For Kennedy to go from 6 to 34, he needs to take 23 points from Joe Biden. That's almost half of Biden's support. How can a single person in the audience explain to me, or please explain to me, how RFK isn't even on the ballot? It's already April. He's not even on the ballot. And he's going to win California by taking almost half of the current Joe Biden supporters. It's just demented. It doesn't make any sense. He's only on the ballot in Utah. He reportedly has the signatures to qualify in Nevada, Hawaii, and New Hampshire. So let's just take New Hampshire, for example, like just to be a little more reasonable. If he does have the votes to get on, this is now New Hampshire polling. If RFK really does have the votes to get on the ballot in New Hampshire, right now in the recent Marist College poll that has Kennedy, it's Biden 44, Trump 41, Kennedy 12. So this is like a little more reasonable. California is just, it's impossible. This is a little more reasonable. Under RFK's explanation, he needs to get to 34. He's at 12. He needs to get to 34. That means he needs to pick up 22 points. So he could take 11 points from Biden and 11 points from Trump to get to 34. It's very difficult to imagine he would even do that. But at least there's a path, right? He still needs to take a quarter of Joe Biden's support and almost a third of Trump's support. And this is a state where it's less insane. The California story is just totally delusional. So my prediction is RFK doesn't win a single state, but he might just take enough of the Biden vote to flip a couple of states to Trump and make Trump the next president of the United States. If you're comfortable writing him in or whatever and toying with that possibility, then you have a different moral and ethical code than I have. And that, I mean, people have different moral and ethical codes. I can't knowingly take any action that makes it more likely Trump gets 4 more years. So I'm voting for Joe Biden. Not perfect, but a very solid presidency with a very solid economy and dozens of important accomplishments. That's what I'm doing. If your moral code is different, your ethical code is different, you may make a different choice. Republican Don Bacon is admitting there's no evidence that Joe Biden committed any high crime or misdemeanor. It doesn't make any sense for criminal charges. It doesn't make any sense for impeachment. The dominoes are now starting to fall, and whether they will eventually all publicly say, we're not going to impeach the guy, I don't know. In fundraising communications, some Republicans are already admitting they're not going to impeach Joe Biden, but we'll talk about that in a moment. Over the weekend, this is Republican Congressman Don Bacon joining NBC News' Kristen Welker and saying, I said I would look at this. To impeach, you need a high crime or misdemeanor. We don't have any high crime or misdemeanor. Good for him for being honest, at least. Take a listen.
Bunch more to get to, so let me turn to impeachment. You said back in December, quote, once we realize there's not a high crime or misdemeanor, we should move on. Has that moment come in your view?
Well, right now, the lawyers in the committee that I talked to say there's not a specific crime, and you need that for a high crime or misdemeanor.
Now, by the way, it's funny that he needed to talk to lawyers to figure that out, because even when you ask those who are convinced there's crimes, even they can't tell you what crimes were committed. So it's funny. I'll check with a lawyer, but I don't even hear from my colleagues what the crimes are that have been committed.
I think the investigation it merited an investigation, put the facts out, let the public look at it, make a determination. And I think it's good to be transparent, especially we're in an election year. So let's put the facts out on the table. But when I talk to the lawyers on the committee staff, they say at this point, there's not a specific crime that's been committed. And
so is it time to drop it, Congressman? Is it, based on what you're saying, is it time to drop it?
I don't know if it's times right now, but I do think we're probably nearing the conclusion of this investigation.
Yeah.
And I think it was important for the American people to see that, yes, there was $24 million in foreign money that the family raised and all the hidden LLCs that the money was moved around in.
Hidden LLC. I like that. Not hidden. Hidden LLCs. Listen, when you are told there isn't a specific crime, you don't really need the word specific, right? It's like there's a broad crime. There's a broad crime we can't quite name, and that's not anywhere in the criminal code. It's a general crime. Oh, but do you have a specific crime? No, it's not a specific crime. It's just like it's overarching crime. He could just as well have said, the lawyers have told me there is no crime, no specific crime. There is no crime. It's been 14, 15, 16 months of this investigation formally and years informally. And what this investigation seems to have accomplished is to completely clear Joe Biden. 40 years in public service, supposedly some kind of mafia boss style leader, while at the same time being so demented he doesn't know what day it is. And they can't find a single specific or general crime. When will it publicly end? I think we all know the answer. It won't publicly and officially end until after the election. But if you look at what they're saying in fundraising emails, you know they know it's over. James Comer, we talked about this before, James Comer, who runs these investigations, runs some of the committees, publicly says, we've got bribery, we've got this, we've got that. In private fundraising emails, he's already saying the impeachment is not going to work. even if we impeach Biden, Democrats in the Senate won't convict. Let's do criminal referrals. Send me some money to make sure I get reelected and I can make that happen in the next presidential term. So in private, they may have known from the beginning there was nothing here. They certainly know it now. They're starting to admit it to their donors. Publicly, Don Bacon still says, well, I don't know about ending it, but we're certainly not finding any crime. So we will just wait and see. It's starting now as we get closer to the summer and closer to the conventions. It's starting to become the sort of thing that could start turning voters off because it's so brazenly transparent and overtly political with zero substance whatsoever. It may start hurting Republicans. That's the one thing that could get them to publicly say it's over. Now we're going to get focused on fixing the economy, which is doing quite well, fixing crime, which is down, fabricating other issues rather than Biden's a criminal. We'll watch it closely. We'll take a break. And speaking of crime, we'll talk about that next. Don't forget that the best way to support the David Pakman Show is by becoming a member, which gives you access to the daily bonus show, the regular show with no commercials. You also get access to our entire archive of every episode dating back a really long time and plenty of other awesome membership perks. Go to joinpakman.com, joinpakman.com. Despite what you might read in YouTube comments about this program being funded by the DNC, George Soros, as some pronounce it, the deep state, the state of Israel, the Mossad, and other anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, this program is not funded by any of those entities. And why would it be? It doesn't really make sense that it would. The program is primarily funded by our viewers and by our listeners. And if you're hearing this message, you are on the public feed of the show. As a member, you could be getting the member feed of the show, where there are no commercials, as well as access to the daily bonus show. It's an extra show that we do every single day. We do members-only town hall events in which you can participate and talk to me. We have a members-only soundboard you can use. Obama! The Obama drop is on the soundboard, believe you me. And soon, with the forthcoming April 15th launch of the new website, our members will get an even better member section of the website. So all of those things are available when you sign up at joinpakman.com. You can use the coupon code SAVEDEMOCRACY24. I think our membership rates are quite reasonable. They haven't gone up in over a decade. They will be going up slightly when the new website launches, but you can lock in today's rates with a discount by signing up at joinpakman.com and using the code SAVEDEMOCRACY24. I'm going to play a very short clip for you of Republican Congresswoman Nancy Mace, I believe, setting a record for lies per second about crime in the United States. As I'm sure my viewers by now must know, because we've covered it so many times, crime is down in the United States. The murder rate is down. The violent crime rate is down. Hate crimes against Jews and Muslims are up. That's true. But that's mostly perpetrated by the right, even though it's the right who's claiming, these democratically run cities. So we're going to play for you all that Republicans have left. They've lost on economics. They have nothing to offer on foreign policy. They're persecuting Joe Biden, despite Biden clearly having committed no crimes. They don't have anything. So they yell about the border and they yell about crime being up. Try to find anything that's true that Nancy Mace says in this video.
You're seeing, since Joe Biden took office, crime skyrocket all around the country. And especially in big cities, you see illegal immigrants coming in, beating up our cops and being taken out without bail, let out of jail without bail, giving the middle finger to America and our men and women in blue and in uniform. You're seeing crime skyrocket. You're seeing fentanyl cases skyrocket. We're literally allowing China to import deadly drugs like fentanyl into this country, and it's killing our children and killing our citizens. We're allowing Joe Biden to have the cartel sneak drugs into the country, smuggle people into the country illegally. Like, it's just okay to do that under Joe Biden. It's not okay. We're a nation of laws and should follow them.
All right. None of that is, well, okay, we're a nation of laws and we should follow them. I guess that's true, even though so many people like Trump and his cronies get to break the law all the time and so far no consequences. Everything there is a lie. Now, before we get into the substance, there was one point where there was a Twitter or X community note saying, hey, this isn't true what Nancy Mace is saying. Crime is actually down in the United States. Suspiciously, that community note was quietly removed. So even on X, it was correcting her lies. And all of a sudden, that community note is gone. Now, let's go through a couple of these different things. Crime is not up, crime is down. We've reported on it extensively. NPR, violent crime is dropping fast in the U.S., even if Americans don't believe it. Remember, facts don't care about your feelings. The facts are all sorts of crimes are down. They are down in all different parts of the country. Now, anecdotally, can you find some type of crime that in some part of the country is up over some particular period of time? Sure. But the trend for decades in the United States has been violent crime is down, property crime is down, murder is down. All of that is down, down, down. Secondly, she makes other assertions, including, for example, that immigrant crime is way up and immigrants are committing all sorts of crimes. The implication always is immigrants commit more crime than natural born citizens. Undocumented immigrants commit more crime than natural born citizens. Neither of those claims is true. And it's obvious why. There is some degree to which there is an entitlement and a security that natural born citizens feel that both legal and illegal immigrants do not. If you know you're here in the country illegally, you're incentivized to stay off the radar of law enforcement because you know that if you have any violation, you get a speeding ticket, you steal a candy bar, whatever the case may be. It's possible, it depends on where you are and what the rules are on show us your papers, but it's possible that some tiny infraction, jaywalking, will lead to the discovery that you're in the country illegally and possibly deportation. So we know that both documented and undocumented immigrants commit crime at lower rates than natural born citizens. If you really want to reduce the crime rate, start deporting natural born citizens. That's the statistical reality. And thirdly, Nancy Mace claims you're just allowed to do whatever you want. China now is allowed to bring in fentanyl or fentanyl, as they often call it. That's not true. China's not allowed to bring anything in. Of course, there is fentanyl being brought in. There's also precursor chemicals that are being flown in. It's not coming across the border. Precursor chemicals are flown in, and then the fentanyl is manufactured here in the United States. Talking about the border doesn't really do anything about that. There's all sorts of other realities when it comes to fentanyl. And then lastly, of course, the idea that the border is open and everything's allowed under Joe Biden. These are all complete and total lies. There's a couple different problems here. Number one, Republicans keep telling these lies and many of their followers fall for them. Number two, many of the platforms and media outlets, Twitter being a great example, they aren't doing a good enough job of flagging that these are lies. There was briefly a community note, which is like a Twitter fact check that shows up saying crime is down and it's gone. I don't have an explanation as to why it's gone on these Nancy Mace videos, but it is gone. We can speculate. I ultimately don't know the answer, but crime is down. And again, remember, because crime is down, because the economy is doing pretty well, because Joe Biden has done some great things on infrastructure and lead pipes and water quality and negotiating insulin and inhaler rates and all these different things, all they have is lies. The border under Biden's wide open. Crime is up under Biden. The economy's terrible, so on and so forth. None of those things are true. You can like the guy or not, Biden. You can think he's done enough or not, Biden. But they have only lies with which to attack him. And that really tells us a lot. Hey, this is just bizarre. Bret Weinstein of the Dark Horse podcast and owner of other such wild claims as 17 million people have died from the COVID vaccine, which I will clarify, there is no evidence that that is true. He stunned his own wife and co-host into silence by wildly claiming out of nowhere that Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is gay. That I know, it's what? And even his wife was so taken aback that she was stunned into silence. I'm sort of stunned into silence myself, to be honest, because it is so sad. Some people kind of lazily say COVID broke some people's brains. But whatever you think about Bret's views on COVID and vaccines and whatever, there's not necessarily a functional connection between beliefs about COVID and just blurting out Trudeau is gay. It's just all so strange. So let's take a look at this. And I don't know, I'm going to get, I know I should just play the clip, but let me give a disclaimer, okay? A pre-disclaimer. I don't know if the defenders of Bret are going to write to me and say, David, what Bret's saying is actually brilliant. It's actually some kind of satire. It's a high-minded joke that I just don't have the intellectual or cognitive capacity to understand. Maybe you're right. Maybe this is simply too highbrow of a joke for me to understand. But it appears his wife also didn't realize it was a joke, if indeed it is, because she was stunned into silence. Look at this and see if anybody can explain it to me.
So the bigger point that we are seeing female strategies being deployed across a number of domains, and if you try it out as men pronounce it, like what do you get Trudeau? I mean, Trudeau, like this is what it's pathetic.
And I guess the context here is they're talking about some kind of alleged feminization of liberal men or something. You know, it's always hard to know exactly what the topics are here.
And
it's pathetic.
Anti-masculine,
it's not,
he
it's
looks
not.
ridiculous.
It's not what women like. There's a wrong-headed belief.
He got by because he was pretty for a little while.
Right. He's also gay.
Trudeau?
Yeah. This is now officially known, but
okay.
But anyway,
I don't care.
No, but the point is, to the extent that there is a false
So that's
story,
why he's being divorced.
Yeah.
Okay.
To the extent,
I guess the argument is the real reason Trudeau is getting a divorce is not because of conflict with his ex-wife or whatever. It's because he's secretly a gay man. Listen, that does exist. It does exist that sometimes there are men who are in heterosexual marriages and it turns out that they're gay and there's a divorce because they are gay and they're going to go and be with men. I scoured the internet and found nothing other than conspiratorial musings about this and just stunning his own wife into silence. What are you talking about? Trudeau is gay. So listen, I want to know more about this. If someone can explain to me what I'm missing, because if you had told me 5 years ago, hey, David, on his podcast, Bret Weinstein is just going to randomly and wildly accuse the Canadian Prime Minister of being feminized and gay, absent any evidence, I would say that's nothing that I would expect from Bret Weinstein. That just doesn't make any sense. He would never do that. Look at his body of work at this point. And I want to remind everybody, the initial way in which Bret came to public knowledge of him went public was when he was teaching at Evergreen State. And there was this day on which white people were told not to come to campus as part of some kind of anti-racist event. He rightly spoke out about it. By the way, it ignores the fact that as a Jewish man, in many circles, Bret's not even white. He's actually part of an even smaller minority group than many of the minority groups that were discriminating against white people on that day. He had a really good and substantive critique and complaint of what was going on there and the kind of backwards nature of some of these anti-racist activities gone too far. And what's happened now, I mean, Trudeau is gay. What? What are you talking about? It's a sad state of affairs. I'd love to know more about what went on here. And again, if I'm just missing the genius or satire of what he's saying, let me know. If you value what we do at The David Pakman Show, remember to support us on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/David Pakman Show, where you can get access to behind-the-scenes videos, the daily bonus show, the commercial-free daily show. You can support the show for as little as $2 a month. Check it out at patreon.com/David Pakman Show. It's great to welcome back to the program today Rachel Bitecofer, political strategist and author of the new book, Hit 'em Where It Hurts, How to Save Democracy by Beating Republicans at Their Own Game. So, Rachel, last time you were on, you said something that my audience continually reminds me of and says you have to get an update from Rachel about this. So let me lay it out for you and we'll pick it up. When we last spoke, I think it was maybe over the summer or so, and I told you I'm looking at the polling nationally. It's concerning me to some degree. You said it's too early. Until Labor Day, people aren't really paying attention. We've got to wait until early in the actual election year, etc. And now, maybe polls are looking marginally better for Joe Biden, but it's not exactly a party that you look at these polls and you say, this looks fantastic for Joe Biden. A lot of the vote is out there, at least theoretically, for third-party candidates who may or may not end up influencing this election, depending on whether they are or aren't on the ballot. I mean, listen, I don't look at it and think this looks awesome. Is it time to worry, I guess, is the question.
Oh, God, no. I mean, you just said it yourself. You said last summer, and I think it was actually a little bit later than that for the book. But anyway, you said last summer, you told me, oh, it's too early. People won't even start to tune into Labor Day. Right now, here you are in March. You're like still in this mode that like the campaign's winding down. And I did a show last week. The host started off the same way. And they said, now that we're coming in their intro, now that we're coming into the final stretch of 2004. And I was like, whoa.
Oh, wait a second. Let me clarify. You said people would pay attention Labor Day. Oh, and we just lost my camera that you see me on, but that's okay. You were saying Labor Day of 23 is when folks really would start paying attention.
No.
Wait, did you mean 24?
Yes. For the presidential election?
Right.
Yes. Please, everyone who's hearing my voice, please read my book. It's
Oh
not
my
because I want
goodness.
to make sales. I want to make people understand how atypically weird you are if you are David Pakman or Rachel Bitecofer or an audience member of one of us or both. We are not normal human beings, okay? The election, for the intents and purposes of your average voter, will not and has not started yet. It will not start until late summer. It's going to start a little earlier this year because we have both nominees. Both are incumbent, basically, nominees. And we're going to end up having a very long general election. So I think we're going to start to see these effects coming in the summertime. But folks, normal human beings they don't follow any news or politics at all. And the election is definitely not coming down to the stretch for them. It hasn't even gotten on their radar, and it won't for months.
Okay, let me put forward a counterpoint and tell me how you would react. If we look historically at polling in April of an election year and then compare it to what happens in November, it's often pretty accurate. So therefore, wouldn't it be logical to think that what we're seeing in the polling today will reflect November?
I don't know. I mean, in 2016, if you looked at polling from April, and Clinton's going to win in a landslide. So
okay, so there's a counterpoint.
Yeah, no, listen, guys. I mean, this is coming from well-researched political science knowledge from my PhD. I am here to tell you about 15% of our compatriots watch news.
Okay.
It's actually 38%, but that other half is watching fake news. They're watching Fox News, okay? So about half of the 38% of Americans that still bother to watch any news, about half of them belong to MAGA's cult, okay? And then that leaves about 15% for us. You can't react to what you don't know about. We've been following all 4 years of Biden's administration and Trump's criminal process. No one else has, okay? But Biden has been in the news. Trump has been disappeared in the minds of these tuned out people. And he's only now starting to re-emerge as a thing. And now that camera is turning to him and people are not liking what they see. So the reason that some of us, the people who really, I don't know what's going on with Nate Silver. Nate Silver knows damn well that these early polls aren't predictive. And the reason you guys can tell that for 100% sure is the 538 model is very polls based. That's why it doesn't really predict very far out. It can predict next week well, but not 4 months out. And he can't even put the model out. Okay. He can't put the model out till August, guys. Okay. Because it's so loud in the polling data. So yes, I understand that people had a very dispiriting 2023, especially within the progressive community, because the grass is always greener on the other side. But now we have almost we're after tonight going to have $150 million war chest Biden has amassed to take on Trump. Okay. With a new nominee, none of that. They would have spent $150 million trying to win the nomination, and then it would have divided our base, and people would be mad right now because their guy Buttigieg didn't win, and and imagine the Black community if Harris didn't win. So we have assets that average layperson, even the well-informed lay people that listen to this show, aren't able or positioned to understand how important those assets are. And, you know, if to answer your question, if we're in August and September and Biden's still down in polling, now keep in mind, you're going to look at all the polling. I'm going to look for likely voters, and I'm going to look for weighting and modeling, because right now we're seeing massive weighting and modeling effects down in the cross-tabular data that's producing crosstabs that kind of defy credulity, especially when you have an election like we had last night or 2 nights ago in Alabama, where we took a swing race in Alabama and won it by like double digits. Okay.
Right.
So it really doesn't, when like me and the polling, like the real polling people, the people who are in AAPOR and have to adhere to really high stringent standards, will tell you, if I crunched a survey when I was a pollster, when I crunched a survey and I weighted it and modeled and did all my shit. Oh, sorry. Can we edit that out?
We'll cut that out. Yes.
Yeah. When I was a pollster, when I weighted and modeled my surveys, the very first thing I looked for were my crosstabs to see, do my crosstabs look weird? Because if they do, that's suggestive that I've weighted and modeled in a way that's distorting the top line data.
So let me just make sure people understand what we mean. There are some polls where you look at the crosstabs and they suggest a 40-point shift in black support for Trump. It doesn't pass the sniff test, and therefore it should make us question the results. That's what you're saying?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, there are some patterns that are so strong in data that you're not, and there's just no way that you're going to see an instant disruption. And we do have a racial realignment going on. It's not a racial realignment. It's actually a education de-alignment. They started with white, non-college educated voters, and now they're grievance politicsing away non-college, everybody who's non-college educated, regardless of race. So the point is this, guys, I'm an expert pollster. I put out a forecast, or not a forecast, but an analysis in December to try to get folks to understand we can't use any of this polling data. It could be right. It could be wrong. It doesn't matter. It's too far out for us to rely on. And then even when we do get into the summer, the work that I'll be doing, you know, with campaigns and clients and myself, I won't be looking at every poll. I'll be looking at good polls that are done with a very likely voter, not registered voters, very likely voters. And I'll be looking for methodological cleanness, right? And, you know, at the end of the day, if in September, if Biden's still polling significantly down in battleground states, then you can get concerned. But I don't think you should have any reason to fear. In fact, there's a lot of signs that we're starting to get people, as they're tuning in, we're starting to see Biden's performance increase. So.
All right. So let me ask about a couple specific things. We are seeing a story about cognitive decline that goes both ways, depending on who you talk to. On the one hand, we have Trump making gaffe after gaffe, unable to speak at many rallies, confusing who's president, confusing who Biden defeated last time he ran, confusing which would be the next world war, confusing who was in charge of security on January 6th. Okay, there's all of that stuff. We also have those who say, look at Biden. He looks frail. He looks forgetful. He sometimes stutters. I've interviewed a couple of experts on this. They seem very concerned about what's happening with Trump, and they believe that what Biden is experiencing is sort of like predictable age-related stuff, but not the cognitive decline that's being attached to him by some. Maybe you have an opinion on this, maybe you don't, but from a strategy perspective, is any of this going to be salient with voters as we get closer to November in terms of who believes which candidate is most compromised cognitively?
Yeah, let me be clear with folks. It's not that you came to this opinion that Biden has senility issues on your own. This was part of on what I would do on the other side, which good thing I'm not evil, folks. Because what I would do on the other side is the same thing that they did. Now, going into 2020, you guys might remember such myths as Biden's actually dead. They're just propping him up in the basement. And as soon as he's inaugurated, Kamala Harris is going to take over and you're going to have a female black president, right?
Yep.
And like they were convinced he'd be dead by June, remember? So like they had kind of built that infrastructure because folks, Biden was old when he ran the first time in 2020. Okay. It's not newly a thing. And what they've been doing since then is flooding the digital space because they're very good at, if you read my book, you'll understand this better. They're very good at setting narratives, and they have done such an effective job on the narrative setting about Biden's mental acumen that going into that State of the Union where he really showed everybody wrong,
Yep.
it was about a 20-point gap. Voters are more likely to describe Biden's brain as flawed than Trump, okay? And so what I've been telling everybody is, look, you've got to get Trump's stuff out there. We have to stop. It's such a flood that our tendency has been to tune it all out and not report and leave in the most outlandish stuff.
Right.
We got to stop that, because if we want people to know that Donald Trump is a dangerous threat whose brain is mush, we have to tell them. So how much we can, that's a negative that Biden has. It's baked in. They did the work for a year out. We did nothing in response until lately. That's not, I don't think we can whittle away with that much, though. I think you're going to start to see the reality of Biden as he's getting covered for campaign stuff start to, appease some of those concerns. And the State of the Union should have left no doubt as to Joe Biden's competence. But we're going to start to see that, I think, a little bit narrow. But at the end of the day, I think that, it's a classic example of what happens when we sleep and they are busy working hard on narrative setting.
All right, so that's that narrative. Let's now talk a little bit about third party. So there are polls where Robert F. Kennedy is polling 3, and there are polls where Robert F. Kennedy is polling 16. You would know better than I which of these are quality and which are not, and we can deal with that in a moment. Increasingly, there was some question at one point about whether Biden or Trump are more hurt by Robert F. Kennedy. On the one hand, historically a Democrat from a Democratic family. On the other hand, appealing significantly to anti-vaxxers and elements of the right wing. So we didn't know. It's sort of seeming to me like it probably hurts Biden a little bit more than it hurts Trump. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I would expect any third party candidate on the ticket who gives a voter an out from voting for Trump that isn't a vote for Biden is bad for us.
Okay. Given that, you look at some polls and you add up the Biden and the Trump part and you get 82, right? So there's 18% that are not there. Sometimes they specifically say, I like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Sometimes they don't. It's not clear at this point which ballots RFK Jr. is going to be on. So in some places, his name may be on the ballot. In other places, it may be, well, I've got to write him in, or maybe I expect him to be there. I show up and his name's not there. So then I pick between Trump and Biden. What are going to be the dynamics of that? And how might we assess the real share of the vote he could come away with?
For me, the third party problem really is just a problem of the swing states. I don't give two hoots about fixing opinion in California. Okay.
Right.
But where it can make a difference is in the margins. And as my first book was on the presidential election of 2016 and quite a bit of diagnostic about the third party defection. It was a clear sign that defection was going to be a big issue because of the Bernie Sanders disaffection. And it absolutely elected Donald Trump the first time. In Wisconsin, where traditionally you see about a 1% wasted vote, and that's what I call it, a wasted vote.
Yep.
It was 6% in 2016. So Donald Trump won Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, all three of them, just with a plurality. And that's because Clinton couldn't quite match him because she lost so much to that third party bucket, right? So third party voting is never good for Democrats. It's certainly not good this cycle, because if we lose, we're talking about an immediate transition into autocracy coming from Donald Trump. So the problems that people have today will seem very quaint in November of 2025, by November of 2025, if Donald Trump wins. So I'm really focused on who's going to be on the ballot and what swing state, and those are where I'd be focusing my energy on.
So now let's talk about the strategy. I continue to think, I talk to Trump people, our correspondents talk to Trump people. Sometimes you get them to change their minds. Republicans formerly for Donald Trump or whatever are putting out interesting profiles of people who used to support Trump and no longer do. But that seems really like retail strategy. You have to spend hours or days with people to get them to sometimes reconsider. It seems to me easier to find the 40% of the electorate that doesn't vote, focus on the people that are already sort of on our side, and explain to them the importance of getting out to vote. Do you agree that that's a more effective strategy, a better use of time? And how do you motivate those folks to get out and vote and about the importance of voting?
So, David, the hypothetical that you pose, a Trump person, a person that likes Donald Trump, is voting for, Republicans and likes Trump and doesn't see any issues with that there wasn't an insurrection. That person, there'd be zero utility in trying to convince them to vote not for Trump. But there's another part of it, and that's about, if you think of his 60 million votes in 2020, it's about half, maybe 60% of that coalition, maybe 70. But there's another 30% of that Republican coalition that's voting for Trump because of brand loyalty to the Republican brand. And it's a very imagistic, loyalty. It's, when I think of Republicans, I think limited government, good on the economy, low taxes. Those are the people there's utility to focus on. And the reason is, as I've alluded once already, to the realignment or de-alignment of non-college educated voters, first whites, and now everybody to the right, as they've been hit with this propaganda grievance strategy, okay? But there's a second realignment as a product of the first. As they did the stuff that did that made people who don't have the education to ward off the effects of propaganda, as they were doing that, it caused a problem in the burbs for them. Smart, college-educated, traditional suburbanite Republicans didn't like it, okay? And you start to see them leave the party really even before Trump, but it escalates quite a bit with him and his nomination. And there's still a lot of those folks out there. So my work as a strategist is getting campaigns to focus on that bucket and break their brand loyalty, because it's not about selling a candidate or a guy. You have to get them to feel like the brand of voting for Republican is bad and they are embarrassed to do it, right? So there's utility there, but at the same time, as I point out in the book, in which people, it's not just you, lots of people are still they're very resistant, they don't seem to be able to make this pivot. The most important thing in the book is this: no one is like us. No one knows any of the news that you know. They don't have any idea. They know there's a separation of powers. They have nothing else. They know who the president is. They probably maybe know who the governor of their state is. Maybe. Definitely nobody else, though. It's so hard for us to accept that is 90% of everybody else, okay?
Right.
And if we don't accept it, it's a big bad thing, because what we're looking at is, all this stuff has happened with Trump, and yet nobody cares. It doesn't seem to change Americans' mind. You cannot respond to a stimulus you never see, okay? And because these folks are never seeing news and information, it becomes beholden to us to go and find the tuned out, right? And especially the tuned out people who are busy enjoying freedom because, they don't know it. They don't know it's at the cost, and it will take time to degrade. But right now, we're the freest Americans that have ever existed, especially if you're not a white male, okay? We have more freedom than we've ever had, but it's also very fresh and on the chopping block of the opposition party. And no one knows that. So if we are going to reach out to those non-voters, it isn't because they got suddenly interested in climate policy. No, okay? No. They're interested in a good time and freedom and not being involved in politics. So you have to convince them that there is a stake, that there is a personal threat heading to them that they should pay attention to, register to vote, and stop.
All right. Dr. Rachel Bitecofer, political strategist, author of the new book, Hit 'em Where It Hurts, How to Save Democracy by Beating Republicans at Their Own Game. Rachel, always appreciate your insights.
Thanks for having me again.
Follow us on social media, interact with the David Pakman Show community, see exclusive content, see when we're taking calls live, and stay up to date on other big show announcements. We post daily. Find us on Reddit, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Discord, and TikTok. Michigan Congressman Tim Walberg is a Christian pastor. He's a so-called good Christian, and he has a solution for what's going on in Gaza. Drop nuclear weapons, talking about Hiroshima and Nagasaki. during a sort of voter town hall sort of event. Take a look at this. We're going to look at the video in a moment. And this is just a reminder of the competing visions. And it's sort of like if you don't like the Biden approach on Israel, Gaza, then I have a little secret to tell you about the MAGA approach on Israel and Gaza, and we'll get to that in a moment. The Detroit News reports Michigan Republican congressman suggests nuking Gaza and ending humanitarian aid. Michigan U.S. Representative Tim Walberg suggested that nuclear weapons, or nuclear, as George W. Bush liked to call them, should be dropped on Gaza, which his office said was a metaphor to support Israel's swift elimination of Hamas. Hell of a metaphor, which, of course, as usual, bloodbath was just a metaphor for the potential problems in the auto industry No, we know the context. We understand how he sends these not so subtly coded message to his followers. So let's take a look at the video here. The audio isn't awesome. It's recorded from the audience, but I think we should hear all of the key parts if we listen closely together.
Are we spending our money to build a port for them? Yeah.
So the question is, why are we spending money to build a port to get aid to Gazans?
It's Joe Biden's reason. We need to get humanitarian aid into Gaza. I don't think we should. I don't think any of our aid that goes to Israel to support our greatest ally, arguably maybe in the world, to defeat Hamas and Iran and Russia, and probably North Korea's in there and China too, with them and helping Hamas. We shouldn't be spending a dime on humanitarian aid. It should be like Nagasaki and Hiroshima. Get it over quick.
It should be like Nagasaki and Hiroshima. Get it over quick. So listen, I think it really is not a subtle difference between the Biden approach and the MAGA and Trump approach. And I know that people sometimes write to me and they say, I'm so angry because Biden keeps arming Israel. You know, the reality is that U.S. aid and military aid has gone to Israel for decades and decades. That's not new under Joe Biden. And to expect that Biden is just going to end that isn't particularly realistic. I want to live in a reality where we deal with what is rather than what maybe we would like. And the options are, I mean, listen, there's really two options. It's Biden or Trump. If you want to pretend for a second that there's a third option, and by polling, the third option would be Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is quite hawkish on Israel. I would argue even more than Joe Biden. So if you want to just rank who the choices are, and if you're not happy because you believe that the Biden administration is too hawkish from the perspective of Israel in this conflict, then the last person you would want would be Trump and the Tim Walbergs and others, or RFK Jr. also wouldn't be a great choice because he's also more hawkish than Biden. So you can say, well, then I'm going to stay home. All right, well, you're just helping Trump then. You'll just help an even more hawkish person become president. Okay, well, then I'll write in Cornel West or Jill Stein. Well, you're just helping Trump. Well, I'll vote for RFK Jr. Well, if he wins, he's more hawkish than Biden on this issue as well. So I think that if people don't want to live in the real world, it's fine. And we see some of this on the right and we see some of it on the left, wanting to live only in theory and in philosophy and in hypotheticals. There's a very real situation where it's going to be Biden or Trump, or if you believe that the math would work out, RFK. All of the options other than Biden are more hawkish. Biden's the guy who wants to build the port to get aid to Gaza. Biden's the guy who has asked for some restraint and has had some dissent expressed relative to Netanyahu. You could say, well, it's not very solid. Fine. But he's at least done some of that, whereas the others have not. These are the three options. And so if you are primarily concerned with this issue in the context of the 2024 election, which remember, most people aren't, this ranks 9th, 10th, 11th, or not at all in terms of voter priorities. But if for you, Israel, Gaza is the number one priority when thinking of a president, of the three options, there's really two. But let's include RFK just for kicks, because he's even worse than Biden on this. It's Biden, Trump, RFK, and Biden is clearly the best on this issue. So sending them, what does it matter? Do you think that the Gazans who might totally be disappeared if Trump is president, do you think it will matter to them that you sent a message about your displeasure with Biden by staying home, which got Trump elected, which led to Trump saying to Israel, take it all out, nuke it for all we care. I don't think that that's something I'd be satisfied with. And that's the way I would be thinking about this. A Republican Congressman Mike Turner was asked about Donald Trump selling $60 Bibles as his next grift. And he misdirected and he said, I'm more concerned about Easter eggs. I'm not kidding. This is what the guy said. And I want to remind you, I guess make the point that the Republican Party, grasping at straws because they have nothing, is continuing to attack Joe Biden for not allowing religious imagery on Easter eggs on Easter Sunday a few days ago, even though it's longstanding policy that has more to do with the egg lobby than it does with any president. But I'll get to that in a moment. Let's start with Mike Turner. He was on Face the Nation. He was asked, what do you think about this? Trump selling $60 Bibles. And he goes, I don't really know anything about it, which is obviously a lie. But here's the real problem.
You mentioned it is Easter Sunday. You said you've been to church this morning. I got to ask, President Trump this past week unveiled what he calls the God Bless the USA Bible.
Right.
Which not only has the words of Scripture in it, but also the text of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and a few other things. Do you think it's appropriate for the former president, for the likely Republican nominee, to be selling such a product?
You know, I haven't really seen that. I've heard some people talk about it. I think I'm more concerned about the White House restricting the ability of children to put religious symbols on Easter eggs for the Easter egg roll at the White House. You know, I'm.
By the way, do any of us believe he hasn't heard or seen that Trump is selling Bibles? It's impossible to believe that.
I'm glad that CBS gives people the right to express their religious freedom. I can't imagine that we're certainly in a situation where the Biden White House is restricting, especially that of children, their ability to express their religious freedoms.
Okay, but you wouldn't buy
hold on.
a copy of this Trump Bible, would you?
I'm not writing a check for that.
Okay, he's not going to buy the Trump Bible. Let me explain to you what he's talking about with Easter eggs. By the way, he didn't answer the question. He's obviously lying that he hasn't seen the Bible. He's just a dishonest guy. But here's what this is about. Fox News and the Daily Caller and other right-wing outlets have been claiming that the Biden administration banned religious themes from the Easter egg contest at the White House. Now, it is true that if you look at the promotion for this Easter egg decoration contest, it says the designs, what you paint on the Easter egg, must not include anything questionable, religious symbols, overtly religious themes, or partisan political statements. Okay, that it's true. That's what it says. It says you're not allowed to do that. The American Egg Board, because remember, this event, it's not anti-religious what's going on with these eggs. It's pro-corporate. The Egg Board, which sponsors this event at the White House, says we've had that guideline language in there for decades. 45 years, I think they've been doing this. And it's because they don't want to wade into political, religious, or controversial content with the Easter eggs and then having to say, well, the winner this year had a religious design on the Easter egg, or the winner did not have a religious design, but some of these others did, and the fact that they didn't win. The idea that for a demented president who doesn't know what day it is, it's amazing the degree to which they believe Biden is involved in everything. Biden chose that Trans Visibility Day was going to coincide with Easter. Well, no, he didn't. It's not. It's March 31st. Since it's been created, it's been March 31st. It's just a coincidence. The Biden White House decided, just to piss off Christians, we're going to ban religious symbols from the egg painting contest. Actually, it's the American Egg Board, which has decided 45 years ago, since they started this event, that they don't want religious or overtly political symbols. And it's because they just don't want controversy. That's all it is. This is the egg lobby, which loves this event, and they don't want anything controversial. That's the bottom line. And it is pathetic that absent any real substance with which to attack Joe Biden, this is what they're relegated to. Biden put Trans Day of Visibility on Easter just to anger Christians. Biden banned religious designs on Easter eggs. The border's open. Crime is up. All lies. This is all they have. It's all they have because at the end of the day, things are going pretty okay under Biden's America. That's the reality. We have a voicemail number. That number is 219-2-DAVID-P. I'm getting more and more voicemails about the potential for a civil war. Let's listen and let's discuss.
Hi, Hi. I'm just wondering what you think about. I feel like no matter what happens in November, someone's going to try to start a civil war. By someone, I mean MAGA. Either Trump is going to tell them to do this, or Joe's going to win and they're going to do it. What do you think something like that would look like? Thanks.
So listen, I know that there are some right-wing provocateurs that have been talking about civil war for years. And if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And because they've decided a civil war is coming, they will point to almost anything and say, see, here's the evidence that a civil war is coming. I'm choosing to remain cautiously optimistic. You know, people ask me, David, do you think if Trump wins, there will be an election in 2028? I do. I think if Trump loses in 2024, he'll still try to steal it. I think he hopefully will not succeed. But if Trump wins in 2024, I do believe there will be an election in 2028. What are the circumstances going to be? What will we have to go through to ensure that that election takes place? That's a different question, but I believe there will be an election. I also don't believe that there is going to be a civil war. And that doesn't mean that there aren't people in the country who, if Trump loses or if he wins, may try to execute such a civil war. But I don't think they're going to be able to get away with it. I don't think they're going to be organized enough to do it. And ultimately, I think actually that domestic law enforcement and, if necessary, National Guards are going to put down such an attempt for a civil war. The bigger concern to me is what you might call a shadow civil war carried out by a Trump administration, wherein they execute Project 2025. They start firing tens of thousands of bureaucratic workers across federal government agencies and replace them with extremist political ideologue MAGA loyalists to turn everything from the IRS and the Department of Education and embassies and the Department of Commerce, turn it all into essentially a tool of MAGA Trumpism extremism. That's the real shadow civil war. It's not a civil war in the sense that the Civil War was one. That, to me, is the real concern. We have a great bonus show coming up for you today. Make sure you sign up at joinpacman.com. Remember that the newest of the children's books, Think Like a Voter, is now available at davidpacman.com/book. Get the book for a kid, for a local library, for a class. It's not a political book. No political message in the book other than vote, which sadly, is it political now to say, hey, voting's good? Maybe it is. davidpacman.com/book. We'll see you on the bonus show. And then we've got the Thursday show coming up tomorrow.